When he didn't have to, he refused to compromise his values for fame. After 5 Grammys and 12 million albums sold, he's now revealing why staying true to himself was his real triumph. Alfred Yankovic was born on October 23, 1959, in a quiet neighborhood in Downey, California. He was the only child of Nick and Mary Yankovic, a working-class couple who lived simply and watched over their Zasan with intense care. Nick worked in a factory, and Mary was a secretary. They didn't let young Alfred play much with other kids. His dad warned him that girls had diseases and stuff. So, most of his childhood was spent inside the house, alone. But this odd, quiet world gave him space to explore music and comedy in ways most kids never had the chance to. He didn't just grow up sheltered. He grew up brewing something strange and brilliant in that quiet. The real turning point came just before his 7th birthday, when a door-to-door salesman knocked. He was selling music lessons. The choice was simple: guitar or accordion. His parents chose the accordion, partly because they shared a last name with Frankie Yankovic, a famous polka player, though they weren't related. That one decision set everything in motion. Al practiced endlessly. With no friends around, he had plenty of time. He took lessons for 3 years, then taught himself. One day, he heard Elton John's Goodbye, Yellow Brick Road. He became obsessed. He played it on his accordion over and over. That strange instrument in his strange little world became his voice. He started school early, then skipped a grade. That meant he was always the youngest kid in class. He was smaller, more awkward, and out of sync with everyone else. By the time he got to college, he was just 16. He lived in Sierra Madre Tower, room 43G at Cal Poly. His dorm mates thought he was odd. He avoided walking to the showers in a towel. He'd carry his clothes with him. One time, they stole them as a joke. He had to wrap himself in a shower curtain to get back. People started calling him Weird Al. At first, it was meant as an insult, but Al did something unexpected. He embraced it. In high school, he wasn't a jock or a partier. He was a valedictorian, a public speaker, and the founder of a fake school club called the Volcano Worshippers, just so he could get another picture in the yearbook. He was also on the yearbook team, writing clever captions. He didn't just stand out. He leaned into being different. After graduating at 16, he enrolled at Cal Poly to study architecture. It was a safe path, a practical one. But he had other things stirring inside. Even in architecture school, Al stood out. One of his professors once found him playing his accordion into a urinal the night before a major deadline. Turned out, he had already finished the assignment. He was just doing his own thing, like always. He got decent grades, but his heart was drifting somewhere else, toward comedy, toward music, and toward that strange name everyone kept calling him. During his 2nd year, he got a job as a DJ at the student radio station, KCPR. It was the perfect match. The Weird Al nickname became his on-air persona. He didn't run from it. He built on it. His shows were filled with bizarre songs and comedy sketches no one else dared to play. He tested boundaries and cracked jokes and got weird on purpose. It was messy, chaotic, and totally him. Some people even say he once flushed a toilet live on air, though he later said that was just a myth. What wasn't a myth was how this little college radio booth helped him become who he was. Then came 1978. Al recorded his very first song, Take Me Down, for a local charity album. It wasn't huge, but it was a start. The lyrics poked fun at local landmarks in San Luis Obispo. It was strange and funny and full of charm, and it featured his accordion, that awkward little instrument, was starting to sound like something people might actually want to hear. But nothing could prepare him for what came next. It all started in a men's bathroom. A 19-year-old college DJ named Alfred Yankovic put inside a tiled restroom at California Polytechnic State University with nothing but his accordion, a cheap tape recorder, and a strange idea. The room echoed perfectly, so he used it as his recording studio. There, he created a parody of the Knack's hit My Kirona. His version was called My Bologna. It was a funny, food-obsessed twist, and he sent it to comedy radio host Dr. Demento. The reaction was huge. Listeners loved it. It got more attention than almost anything else played that year. Then came the moment that changed everything. The Knacks came to perform at Yankovic's college. Nervous but excited, he waited backstage and met the band's lead singer, Doug Feger. Instead of brushing him off, Feger turned to a Capitol Records executive and said, "You should release this, just like that." Capitol Records paid him $500 and released the song. On Christmas Day, 1979, My Bologna hit stores and sold 10,000 copies in a month. It was the first real step in what would become a long, unexpected career. But it wasn't easy after that. By 1982, even with more songs playing on Dr. Demento's show, most record labels thought he was just a joke. They said parody songs were one-hit wonders. They didn't want to take a risk. Yankovic himself later said, "They thought I'd have one hit and disappear." But he wasn't giving up. He recorded a new parody called I Love Rocky Road, a take on Joan Jett's I Love Rock and Roll. It was catchy, weird, and full of energy. Guitar legend Rick Derringer helped him produce it. Even better, a manager named Jay Levy sent the track to a radio station in L.A. The response was immediate. Fans couldn't get enough. That airplay pushed one man, Ted Dowd of Rock and Roll Records, to finally get Yankovic a real contract with Scotti Brothers. His first album was now officially in the works. In 1983, his debut album dropped. It had everything fans wanted. The re-recorded version of My Bologna, a parody of Mickey Called Ricky, about I Love Lucy, and the rough, hilarious Another One Rides the Bus. The album was full of energy, and with help from Dr. Demento, Yankovic toured the East Coast and Midwest, performing live for fans who actually came to see him. These were his people. The shows were weird, fun, and packed with laughter. The album cover looked like something out of Mad magazine, exactly the vibe Yankovic wanted, and his music video for Ricky made it onto MTV, which was still brand new at the time. That small success gave him the confidence to quit his job in a mailroom and go all in on music. But not everything was smooth. One night, in 1982, he and his band were booked to open for a new wave group called Missing Persons. It was supposed to be a big break. Instead, it was a disaster. The crowd didn't want to hear comedy songs or see a guy playing the accordion. They booed, threw things, and mocked him for 45 brutal minutes. Yankovic was crushed. As he walked back to his car, embarrassed and exhausted, a kid came up to him. "Are you weird, Al Yankovic?" he asked. Al smiled and said, "Yes, I am." The kid looked him in the eye and said, "You suck." That moment could have ended everything, but it didn't. Instead, it taught him a lesson. Don't waste time performing for people who don't get it. From then on, he made sure to play for his own fans, people who showed up because they actually wanted to hear the stories of the old days. He was a great musician. 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 Weird Al even showed up as a contestant on Family Double Dare in May 1988. Things were finally looking good again, but the good times didn't last long. In 1989, Weird Al made a movie called UHF. Early signs were promising. Test audiences loved it. In fact, their scores were as high as the original RoboCop screenings. Weird. Al thought he might finally break into movies, but when you actually made it, the failure of UHF hit Weird Al hard. For 3 years, from 1989 to 1992, he struggled. He called it the worst creative slump of his life. At one point, Orion Pictures had talked about him becoming the next Woody Allen. But after the movie bombed, people stopped returning his calls. Industry friends avoided him like he had some kind of disease. Weird, Al later said. Nobody wanted to make eye contact. He wasn't sure he could keep going. He said he wasn't exactly depressed, but it felt terrible. He spent a few years just licking his wounds, trying to figure out if he had a future in comedy or music at all. During this dark time, he also made another big decision. He ended his partnership with producer Rick Derringer. Derringer had been with him from the start, helping to produce his first 5 albums. They had done some great work together, winning Grammy Awards and building Weird Al's early sound. But after UHF, Weird Al realized he needed more control. He wanted to produce his own music. He needed to change, not just to survive, but to grow. The music world was shifting fast in the early 90s, and Weird Al knew he had to shift with it. His big comeback started with one phone call. Weird Al wanted to parody Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit, but he couldn't get through official channels, so he just called Kurt Cobain directly while Nirvana was at Saturday Night Live. Cobain loved the idea and said yes right away. Smells Like Nirvana came out in 1992, and it changed everything. It wasn't just a funny song. It captured the moment perfectly. It joked about how nobody could understand Cobain's lyrics, but it did it with affection, not cruelty. The video even featured some of the real cheerleaders from Nirvana's original video. Weird Al was back. Off the Deep End, the album the song appeared on was a hit, and it ended the worst slump of his life. The 1990s turned out to be a golden era for Weird Al. He kept the momentum going with albums like Alapalooza in 1993 and Bad Hair Day in 1996. Bad Hair Day was huge. It opened at number 14 on the Billboard charts and featured Amish Paradise, a parody of Coolio's Gangsta's Paradise. The album became a pop culture staple. For many fans, it introduced them to 90s rock and hip-hop, just by listing the original artists in the album notes. Running with Scissors came next in 1999, with songs like The Saga Begins, a hilarious retelling of Star Wars, and It's All About the Pentiums, poking fun at computer geeks. Weird Al's albums in the 90s sold more than 4.5 million copies in the United States alone. Bad Hair Day even went double platinum. Weird Al's career also stood out because of how he handled parodies. Legally, he didn't need permission to make them, but he always asked anyway. It was about respect. Some artists like Kurt Cobain were thrilled to be parodied. Others, like Prince, always said no. Weird Al honored their wishes. Even when it meant giving up great material, he even reached out for style parodies, where he just mimicked a band's sound without copying lyrics. It was a smart way to avoid drama and keep good relationships in the music world. Still, not every situation was smooth. In 1996, Coolio was furious over Amish Paradise. He claimed he hadn't given permission, even though the song's producer had. Coolio slammed Weird Al in interviews and even mocked him in one of his own songs. The feud lasted years, but eventually they made peace. In 2006, backstage at the Consumer Electronics Show, they finally talked. Coolio admitted he had overreacted. He even joked that if Michael Jackson could laugh at himself, so could he. Weird Al had sent him a handwritten apology years earlier, along with a share of the royalties. Coolio never answered, but he accepted the peace offering. Through ups and downs, Weird Al never changed the core of who he was. He respected the artists he parodied. He made people laugh without tearing others down. And no matter how the world around him shifted, he always found a way to stay true to himself and stay funny. Weird Al Yankovic's life took a big turn in 1992 when a friend gave him a book called Diet for a New America. Before that, Al had already started cutting red meat from his meals, but the book completely changed the way he looked at food. It wasn't just about health. It talked about animals and the bigger impact on the world. At first, Al couldn't imagine Thanksgiving without turkey. He thought it would be impossible. But once he made the jump, he realized he didn't miss meat at all. He tried going full vegan too, though he later joked that he sometimes slipped up and ate dairy, saying he had to hand over his hardcore vegan card. touring as a vegetarian wasn't easy in the early 90s either. Sometimes his only options at truck stops were applesauce or toast. But times have changed, and now he finds vegetarian choices almost everywhere he goes. Even with all these changes in his personal life, Al never made a big deal about it publicly. He kept his eating habits separate from his music and comedy, never pushing it onto his fans. Just a few years later, Al decided to change something else about himself, his eyesight. On January the 23rd, 1998, he went to UCLA's Jules Stein Eye Institute for LASIK surgery, which was still pretty new back then. His eyesight was so bad that he couldn't even read the biggest letter on an eye chart unless his nose was almost touching it. Instead of paying for the surgery, Al agreed to let it be broadcast live on TV. It was typical, Al turning something nerve-wracking into something a little absurd. Dr. Robert Maloney, who had done the surgery on himself too, explained that lasers would reshape Al's cornea to fix his extreme nearsightedness. After it was over, Al said goodbye to his thick glasses for good. When he showed up with long hair and no mustache in 1999 for the release of Running with Scissors, he looked like a brand new person. He laughed about it later, saying if Madonna could reinvent herself every 15 minutes, he figured he deserved one change every 20 years. While his look was changing, something even bigger was happening in his personal life. A friend introduced him to Suzanne Krajewski, and after talking on the phone for a while, they fell for each other without even meeting face-to-face. Al admitted he had a crush on her just from their conversations. When Suzanne asked about his life, he joked that she could just watch his Behind the Music special on VH1. Neither of them had ever been married before, but they both knew this was it. They got married in 2001, and 2 years later, they welcomed their daughter, Nina. Al often talks about how amazed he is by her love of nature and the outdoors, saying he spent his own childhood glued to the TV and joking, "Where did we go, right?" It's clear that becoming a dad made him even more grateful for the life he built. On April 9th, 2004, Weird Al Yankovic's life changed forever. That day, both his parents, Nick and Mary Yankovic, were found dead in their California home. They had lit a fire, but forgot to open the flue, and carbon monoxide filled the house. Family members found them when they got worried after not hearing from them. It was a terrible accident, and even though Al was crushed, he made a decision that surprised everyone. He stayed on tour, performing just days after losing them. In a message to fans, he said being on stage was helping him cope, even if it didn't take the pain away. For him, singing in front of cheering crowds gave him a little break from constant sadness. It showed just how much strength he had and how deeply he believed that music was not just his fans, but himself too. There's another strange part of Al's story that fans love talking about. It's his weird connection to the number 27. It started in the early 90s. One day, Al's drummer said Al just thought 27 was a funny number, but soon, fans noticed it popping up everywhere. He was given trailer number 27 at a fair. He joked about seeing movies 27 times. In one song, he even sang about drinking beer 27 times. The number showed up on album covers, license plates. Even in his movie cameos, Al later admitted that once he saw fans getting excited about it, he started slipping it into his work on purpose. What started as a joke became one of the fun little mysteries that made his fans love him even more. Al's band is another amazing part of his story. In a business where people are always fighting and breaking up, his band stuck together for decades. Steve J., John Bermuda Schwartz, Jim Kimo West, and Ruben Valtierra stayed by his side. They weren't just backup players, they were stars in their own right. Steve wrote music for TV shows and had his own albums. Jim became a master of Hawaiian guitar. John kept careful track of Al's career and even ended up as a cartoon on The Simpsons more than once. Ruben played with legends like Stevie Wonder and Aretha Franklin before joining Al. They stayed together because they loved the music and they respected how much work Al put into every song. They knew it wasn't just silly parodies. Every note and every word mattered. Even though Al started out making joke songs, he didn't stay small. He sold over 12 million albums, more than any comedy artist ever. He made more than 150 songs and played thousands of shows. 6 of his albums went platinum and 4 went gold. His biggest hit came with Bad Hair Day in 1996, which sold over 2 million copies. Then, even later, Running with Scissors brought in even more. Along the way, he picked up 5 Grammy Awards and 16 nominations. In 2014, something incredible happened. His album, Mandatory Fun, went straight to #1 on the Billboard charts. It was his first #1 album, and it was also the first comedy album to hit #1 since the 1960s. His single-word crimes even made it onto the top 40. It was proof that even after 40 years, Al could still surprise everyone. Al didn't stop there. In 2021, he announced another wild tour. This time, it would be different. No fancy costumes, no big screens, no big parody songs. Instead, he wanted small shows where he played the songs he wrote himself, the ones that most people didn't hear on the radio. He called it the ridiculously self-indulgent, three-advised vanity tour. He played 133 shows, even making it all the way to Carnegie Hall in New York. It wasn't about jokes or big lights. It was about music and connection, and Al loved it. He said it was the most fun he ever had on stage. In 2022, Hollywood made a movie about his life. But just like everything else with Al, it wasn't a normal movie. It was a parody of his own life, filled with wild, made-up stories. Daniel Radcliffe, the guy who played Harry Potter, starred as Al. The movie didn't just tell jokes. It made fun of every serious biopic ever made. It premiered at the Toronto Film Festival and got great reviews. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a high score, and the New York Times called it hilarious. Even the Emmy Awards honored it, with wins and nominations. It showed that even when telling his own story, Al couldn't resist making everyone laugh. But Al's biggest impact isn't just in music or movies. He changed how people think about comedy itself. In 2014, when he released Mandatory Fun, he didn't just put out an album. He dropped 8 music videos in 8 days across different websites, making his songs go viral before most people even knew what going viral meant. When reporters said he was copying Beyoncé's surprise album tactic, he laughed and said she was copying him. His smart understanding of how the internet worked kept him popular with new generations. He wasn't just a guy who made parodies. He showed that comedy could be serious work. He showed that funny songs could have real value. Thanks to him, comedy music is not just a joke anymore. It's a real part of pop culture.